Okay, thank you everyone for coming to our show and tell. Today we've had another quite a busy 2 weeks of it, really. Slightly less pressured, I think, or less frantic than the previous 2 weeks, but we've still got so much done and an awful lot to tell you. So just a brief reminder of what we had previously been up to. At our last show and tell, we talked a lot about our vision and the workshops that we had on that, because if in doubt, have a workshop. And so the vision is to have a catalog, effectively, of generic APIs that serve data which has been captured once to whatever service that needs it. So rather than capturing data in UH and tenancy and academy or whatever, it's captured once and then reused right across the council as much as we possibly can. That's the vision, basing everything around domains and entities. And that all sounds fantastic, but what does that really mean? And what have we done about that? So I'll hand over to Rashmi to talk about work on the vision and roadmap over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Karen. So what we have done, so we have reviewed our roadmap to reprioritize the goals that will help us to build the vision. It gave us a lot of confidence about our goals and where are we heading towards. It also makes me proud to say that the team is really doing well. We are slightly ahead of where we forecasted we would be at the end of June, which is really good news. We started a theory, testing our theory by enabling a simple integration started with the academy with single view. That's the use case we are trying to follow. Single view is a core service that we are focusing on, and hopefully by the end of this month, we'll be succeeding in that integration. So next slide, please. So in August, we'll looking to integrate more with single view, obviously with other platform APIs as they are being built up. So one of them will be tenancy API for tenancy information, which also be used for the manage a tenancy re-platform hub and possibly manage arrears and start looking at the NCC CRM as well as part of the process. We will also be looking at our API hub because that's the main entry, is a one-stop shop for all our platform APIs. That's the part where everybody will be looking at for the set of platform APIs to be listed. So this is a very important step for us to make sure that part is not ignored. So from September, we'll start thinking about the deprecation of old APIs and start the discoveries into new domains such as account, documents, and transaction. And there are many more apart from these. So let me assure that it's never-ending process. But yeah, but we don't want to ignore those ones as well. So I really want to discuss about this data contract. We've been discussing with the IM team, and they have been so helpful on this part particular, because we know there's lots of things that we still have to cover, especially around how do we agree on the data contract framework. When I say data contract framework, it's about terms and conditions. So when people sign up on the API hub, how do we assure that the data is not being misused or it's not being used in something that we do not intend to. So we are thinking, to Nick, last week especially, we had a really good conversation with Nick and Tom about how do we build that terms and condition framework, what are the things that needs to be got. So obviously it's a first step towards this data contract, but obviously we will be improving on that. I've started doing a paper on it and we'll be sharing with Nick and Tom to make sure that they have input on that one. And as I said, the access would be via API Hub. And we also been discussing about retention of data. Mind you, this has also been it's also involving the Maytech team, Mirella, who's a tech lead for this project. So yeah, so we are making sure that any retention of data is not forgotten, and we are thinking over that as well. And this is a step that we'll be improving as we go in this project. There's also two good news, I would say that, especially with regards to this project. We got a really good interest from AWS, and they want us to host a special show and tell for their team on our API model and how their team can contribute ideas and validate this process. It's a huge step for us. And second thing, we've got a private company, AI and machine learning based organization who would like to collaborate with us and us to think more about our API model, and they want to discuss about our experience on AWS going forward. it's and how would they collaborate with us going forward. So this is a huge step, and basically it validates our approach and help us to improve on our approach. So yeah, these are two shout outs basically that I would like to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. But what about the engineering? Obviously, it's nice to have a vision, but we have to actually build the things to achieve the vision. I'll hand over to Bucky to talk about the housing API.
Oh, hello. The UH housing API.
Yes.
Yeah. So the UH APIs are basically using the same structure in terms of data that's returned as the previous APIs. So there's endpoint that can be called that using an ID, and you will retrieve a single record relating to a resident from that endpoint of the API, and also a second endpoint which will provide a list of residents. This can be called using resident name, address, and house reference fields, and you will retrieve a list of matching residents from that endpoint. So with that, I think you'll get information regarding the address, first name, last name, other information regarding NI, UPRN, and things like that. I think there's a Swagger Hub link, but I don't think it's on the slide, but I guess we can put that in later.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's the Housing Resident Information API.
And it's pretty much the same format as all the other APIs that we built, isn't it?
Yeah. Except for resident vulnerabilities,
yeah.
Which is slightly different, yeah.
Okay. Next, I think Emma talking about cautionary alerts.
Yeah, hi. So those of you that don't know, cautionary alerts, they're stored in UH and they're used to inform staff of like health and safety. So like if they're going to go visit a property or someone in the property, anything they might need to be aware of. So the API that we're creating is going to have two endpoints. The first one, which we've just finished, is to retrieve alerts against a person specifically, and we're using tag ref and person number to like identify that person. And then the second one will retrieve cautionary alerts against a property. I think the identifiers for them are still to be determined, the joys of working with UH data. And that one's just in progress at the moment. And for both endpoints, there'll be no personal information returned. It'll just be like the relevant system identifiers that we're using, and then just like details of the alerts. So it'll be a bit different to the previous APIs.
Just in case anyone's wondering, the alerts can be things like dangerous animals or interpreter required. Nothing particularly controversial, but something that's not disclosed at the moment in single view, is it, Emma?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. So it can be all sorts. One that Morella always tells me is like maybe the lift is broken.
Thank you. Louise. No, sorry, Ben.
Good afternoon. So the aim with all of these separate APIs is that they will eventually feed into a top-level resident information platform API. That resident information API is currently being built, and it's being designed to call the individual APIs, each of the individual APIs with the information search for. So it'll search through each system, make a call to the individual APIs, and return all of that data as a list saying which systems it's come from. We've got the infrastructure set up, and we're currently working on the list endpoint for searches. We're building that in such a way as to have each API call and response have its own individual call to make it a bit more, it's easier to add and edit individual API responses rather than having one single generic response, which might need to account for dozens, if not more, APIs. So the aim is that this API will sit between the individual APIs and, for example, single view, to provide it with much of the data it needs. And the first iteration of it currently provides consolidated view from various sources, starting with Universal Housing and Academy, and then we'll expand into our original 7 APIs.
Thank you. And last, I think we hand over to Matt to talk about writing back to the databases.
Yes, thank you. So we wanted to look into writing to the source system from our APIs. We did this a bit, a few of us on the Housing Data in the Cloud project from a UH perspective. But this time around, we were asked to look at Academy as the use case. And this involved lots of investigations into all the different options that we could use, and digging around inside large PDFs and on servers and in databases. And there's not a great deal of clear information about this. Glyn, one of the system administrators, was very helpful, pulling out lots of it. But essentially, the options boiled down to, there's these ABC web SOAP services, which are applied by the supplier. I have no idea what ABC stands for. But they, the ones we might be interested in within those web services, they're very, very complex. There's a lot of information, a lot of data you need to provide them. And there also seems to need quite a lot of authorization fields, but there's nothing documenting what those authorization fields are, how we get whatever key might be needed. And there was nothing there that easily told us how we could use them. And the second option is write directly to the database. Now, that's not usually a good idea with these kind of proprietary systems anyway, whether that's from breaking a license perspective, or whether you're actually breaking the system. So we know it's not a good idea, but we thought we'd still look into it. But it's especially not a good idea when the data's not in a familiar structure. It's not normalized data. There's a lot of complexity there, which could lead to us breaking the system. And it's also not even a familiar database engine. It's on Ingress, so we're not really got the skills to properly look into what we would be doing within the database. So essentially, this is just a much larger challenge than we have the time for. It take a considerable amount of time, and I think a lot of engagement with the supplier as well to actually kind of take this on.
Thank you, Matt. So that's an overview of what we've been up to for the last couple of weeks. What questions have people got for us? Or is this going to be like every week, Chris, almost pulling teeth?
Sorry, I have one question.
Yes, Alvin.
Yep. So I gather from the presentation that all of these APIs are going to be sitting behind a generic platform API. So just to clarify, will any API requests go via that platform API, or will there be any direct access to the lower level APIs?
So that will be depending on the needs of the service. We will have the higher level platform API, the resident information API, for services that require information from all different data sources, just to have like an overall view of data we hold against a single person. However, we might have individual use cases, for example, manager tenancy, that just requires a housing resident information for tenants and leaseholders. So they'll have a direct access to this platform API. So it's all dependent on the needs of the service.
Okay, thanks. So we're not going to be restricted to accessing the individual APIs directly. Only if we need like a consolidated set of information would we access the top level API.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Philippa.
Hello. Thank you for the show and tell. Really enjoyed it. Matt, that thing about writing back took me straight back to housing data in the cloud. What I was going to ask is that we know we're on our kind of countdown with UH now in terms of it being decommissioned. And I think that's just probably a question for Rashmi in terms of that kind of thinking about the longer time frame and the product as a whole. Yeah. How is this work kind of fitting in with that? How are we dovetailing this work, this fantastic work, with the work that we know we've got to do around UH decommissioning
Exactly. So we are aware about that, and we started our first experiment academy purposely because that's something that we are not aware about. So yeah, we know UH is possible. There's already brilliant work done in housing data in the cloud project. We would like to go forward it, but if the current need is for managing the single view and the manager tenancy replatforming hub, so we have prioritized that. But going forward, that will not stop us to start thinking from the right update. But think that if I wouldn't be more interested in doing the update on the UH because we know in 18 months time it will be retired. So we need to come up with a really good solution that if we are planning to retire that, what is the next step that we should be, where the update should really go? Either should be going in a Postgres database or should we think about the UH, how we need to work out on that strategy bit. So this is why we are not commenting on that, but going forward, we would like to use this as an opportunity to work on that one. Thanks, Philip. I hope I've answered your question, Philippa.
Yeah, I think so. I think I guess it's what we're building now with our API platform is going to help inform, and we can build on it for whatever solution we need to get to when we decommission UH.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's something that we also keeping our mind very, very, we are making it on, keeping on our list for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just saw there was a comment in the chat from Kate around data contracts. I don't know if Tom's in the meet. Rashmi, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, so as I mentioned about it, that we started having this collaboration work with IAM team with regards to the data contract and the retention of data. So we had two separate meetings. One was a retention of data, especially around the tenancy documents that will be exposed as a part of a tenancy API. And the other part was a data contract. So we were thinking about it. How would we make sure that the data is secure, especially when it's exposed to our platform API? So I've started writing that document. So once I've done with that, I will make sure that Tom and Nick oversee on that one hand, put their comments. And it's a good idea that we have definitely set in my mind to write about the blog post on it because I know a lot of people are interested on that step. So yeah. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that every week we are releasing something. So we started with the platform API about what we want to achieve via this project, what exactly it means. Second was about how should we name about our APIs and what are the data taxonomy and how what we have learned from our platform API project. So every week something will definitely be released. This week is Swagger Hub document. Next week is about data security, and next after that, once the data contract document's up and ready, I'll be making sure that I'll post that out as well. So yeah, thanks, Dave.
I'll make sure you do. Don't worry.
For sure.
Tom, I see that you are here. Do you want to add to Rashmi's answer on the data contracts and how that would work at all?
Only to say, so I think the first conversation was always about, so way back in March, we had that conversation about what the ambition was for managing retention of data that was available via the platform APIs and how that worked in relation to the service API concept as well. So we knew that service APIs were going to be the mechanism for applying rules to the data that was available by the platform API. And we sort of approached the conversation in a couple of different ways, thought about target data sets that we might think about applying retention to. And I think the key thing going forward is going to be that, and Rashmi's already touched on this, but as we look to develop new services or as we work with services to iterate tools that call on the platform API data, what we want to be able to do is intercept those conversations about developing the right retention policies at that point. So if we have a repeatable framework for doing that as tools plumb into that platform API data, then that's really the best outcome we can look for. And then what we'll be targeting is sort of a proof of concept project that's manageable in scale to check that it all works in the way that we hope it does.
Thank you. Any more questions for the team on anything? Cake recipes? I discovered yesterday there's a cake subscription service in London, and I need to know where this is. Sorry, Selwyn.
Just another quick one for me regarding databases like Ingress, which I know that it's a challenge to sort of get the data out because we don't have full understanding about it. Do we have many databases or engines like these that we have to work with?
That is the only one that I know of that's Ingres. We have, I know we've got, I mean, UH is SQL, isn't it? And to be honest, the Ingres data that we're pulling out is actually, we're pulling from a mirror that is pulled from Ingres into SQL. So from the extraction point of view, it's been similar to what we've done with the other data sources. But yeah, Ingres itself is challenging because there's different drivers that you need for it just to connect. That's before you even get into the actual data and the structure, the way it's been structured, which is, I'm sure there was a reason for it once, but it's horrific. That's technical terminology, horrific. Yeah, I don't know what other databases we've got across the council that we might actually be interested in. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Related,
I understand that. Yeah.
related to that, Matt. Related to that, sorry, Mac, information security. So you were looking to write back using the API and you're considering Academy, then in that case, would you not consider another system to start with if it's possibly got a normalized SQL backend?
We already, as I say, from the housing data in the cloud, we already know what we can do with UH for certain domains within UH. I suppose each one's unique in its own way. Yeah, I think Ingres was just an interesting one that came from Matthew Kane asked us to have a look at it for a particular kind of use case. But as I say, it just it may still be possible, but it's just something that we do not have. It would, I feel it would be a project of its own. It would be really, really time consuming.
I agree, and we wanted to do a quick spike before we comment on it, and something we wanted to document as well. So if in future, if we decide that we have to retire Ingres and what are the things that were around it, so we have documented that. But for this project, we have just mentioned what is possible and what's not possible. So yeah.
It's also in line with good agile principles, Mac. So fail fast and tackle the things that you don't know first. And so this was obviously the one that we were least familiar with, and we've decided at this point, let's not go down this rabbit hole. Let's just park it and focus on stuff that will bring more value to the project and to the console.
Also, to expand a bit on Selwyn's question, like currently we're only dealing with 4 or 5 data sources, so Ingres is sort of our biggest challenge. But as we did in the discovery in the beginning, we found that there's more than 20 data sources that host person data in Hackney, and we will be expanding our scope in the future to cover those. So we are expecting further challenges as we go along.
Yes.
I suppose CRM is a case in point, isn't it?
Yes.
We know that we've got some data in CRM that we need to extract somehow.
Yeah. So that's lots to go, to be honest. Just a beginning.
So much fun. Any further questions? We do have a few minutes left if there's anything that's burning. No, otherwise we can end it here. As always, week notes will be published tomorrow morning with links to our roadmap and to this recording. And if as ever, if anybody does have a question that comes up afterwards, please just drop one of us a line, or you'll find us on Slack in the API discussion channel as well. But thank you very much for your time, and see you in a few weeks.